Hello guys, today I will try something very different for this channel. Usually I have short videos, 2 to 5 to 10 minutes with short tips or short topics. Now let's try a longer video, much longer one. A real project that I will almost live code for you in 1 hour or so. Because there is a trend on YouTube for longer videos in general, like interviews and podcasts and live streams and live coding, so I decided to try that as well. And let me know in the comments if this format works well for you, and then maybe I will do more of such longer videos step by step. It's not a strictly live coding. I still cut quite a lot of behind the scenes, and sometimes I copy some HTML from my notes. Strictly live coding would be 3 to 4 hours maybe, so I stripped it down into 1 hour, but it's still a step by step without missing the piece. And the project is for beginners for Laravel, so for those who want to start from scratch or remember the basics with example of how I would do that in 2024 with Laravel 11, simple project with Laravel Breeze and 4 CRUDs. This is the GitHub repository with a few screenshots of the final result, and this is the description. So plain Laravel Breeze without any view or livewire, managing users, managing roles and adding roles with Spotty Laravel permission package, and 3 CRUDs with foreign key relationships and some validation. Nothing really too fancy, so it's feasible to do within 1 hour or so. You can actually try to build that project without my video yourself, and my way of building that is just one way. Maybe you will have something different to share, then shoot in the comments below. Now the main twist of that longer video is thing that I want to try is the idea of publishing this longer video on YouTube, but then a premium version on Laravel.com for premium members, and a premium version will be shorter. So this is the hypothesis. You can watch me live code or almost live code for 1 hour, or I can quickly run through the actual code of already coded project with exactly the things that you need to know. What are the routes, what are the controllers, what are the models and stuff like that, in a much shorter format in like 10 to 15 minutes. So I will shoot that separately on Laravel.com, including the link to the repository. So this is another twist and hypothesis that I want to test and check. That you can get the information free on YouTube, but premium packaged information should be for premium members, because that's the essence of what people pay for courses, usually for packaging the information in more convenient way to consume. So in the description of this video, I will put the link to the shorter version of this video, including the link to the repository. And this will be available for Laravel.com premium members. I know it sounds like a weird model, but let me know what you think in the comments. Now let's begin building this project. The prerequisite for that you have already installed web server, Laravel CRUD or Valet or whatever you have, and all the tools prepared for Laravel like Composer, PHP, database, and Laravel installer. So in this video, I will start with Laravel new and go from that. So let's start building our small CRM. So we start with installing Laravel with Laravel new with Laravel installer, and I'm using Laravel CRUD locally as a server, but there are a few options to that Laravel new, like choosing a starter kit, choosing a database, or choosing the Git repository. And I used to do that with the flags like --git or something, but recently Laravel installer improved with a wizard, and this is exactly what we'll go for. So which starter kit do you want? We want Laravel Breeze. Which stack? Regular blade with Alpine. Dark mode? No, I don't need that. Passed as a framework. And would you like to initialize Git repository? Yes, we need that. And Laravel elegantly does 2 commits in this case. So let's wait a minute. Next question is which database to use. I will use MySQL. This is just my personal preference. You can use SQLite as well. Run default migrations. No, we will change migrations manually quite a bit. And it is installed. Okay, it took roughly 30 seconds on my machine, and now if we type in minicrm.test in the browser, to me it shows the error that the database is found, but there's no sessions table, and I've created the database behind the scenes minicrm here in my local SQL, but I didn't run migrations. So after all, we do need migrations, so we do cd minicrm, and then let's clear it up. PHP artisan migrate. In a while we will remigrate fresh, but for now we need those tables. And now if we refresh the page, we should have the default Laravel page with Laravel Breeze installed, so registration should also work. So let's try using the fake filler Chrome extension, and we register, and we're inside of Laravel Breeze typical dashboard. Step 1 done. And side note about the Git repository, I already mentioned that to you. So now it initialized an empty repository but committed 2 commits. So if we do git log, Laravel separates the commits of setting up a fresh Laravel app and install Breeze separately. Convenient. Our next task is to separate name into first name and last name in the database and everywhere we need on the page. So here we have that demo first user in the database, and here's what we need to change. First, in the migrations, and I told you we will remigrate that again at least a few times, refresh the database, so until we push the project somewhere we can make any changes and refresh the database from scratch. For now, for the beginning. So we change the name to first name and last name. So that's one change. Then in the user model we change the fillables to also first name and last name. Then we need to change the registration form. So Laravel Breeze comes with register blade. So in here, instead of name, we need to duplicate all of that and do first name and last name. I will make the changes behind the scenes to save you some time. There we go, have first name and last name respectively. Let's log out and let's refresh that registration form and see what we have here. First name and last name. Oh, I forgot that in Laravel Breeze every subsequent field has margin top 4 tailwind class. Now we refresh. Good. First name, last name. And now in the registration form of Laravel Breeze, we have registered user controller, I think it is called, in the store. We need to change things here as well. So first name, then duplicate last name with the same validation rules, I think, and then duplicate that here, first name and last name. Okay, let's remigrate the database and try to register. So we're running migrate fresh, and in the register form we use fake filler Chrome extension again. We register and we're inside the dashboard with a new user. And now we see another thing we missed is we don't have full name here on the top right. So let's fix that one. In the database, if we refresh now, we have first name and last name. And now in the navigation of Laravel Breeze, let's search for name and we have auth username. Let's change that to first name. And also it is somewhere in the responsive. So yes, same thing for responsive. In Laravel Breeze, by the way, in navigation, all the menu items are repeated twice for regular layout and mobile layout. So if you need to add something like a new menu item or something like that, please double check the navigation blade because, for example, there's X responsive navlink and there's a regular X navlink. We will get to that later when adding new menu items. This is just a tip, by the way. Now we refresh and we have Eve on the top right. Great. The final thing we need to change with first name and last name, it's kind of invisible, but for the future I know we will need that, is factories. So by default, Laravel comes with factory, user factory, and it adds the default field. So we need to change that to first name, and Faker has a separate first name method, and then last name also with its own method for last name. That's it. And just to test it, we can open database seeder, which by default looks like this, but let's change that to create 10 users instead of just one 10 user, and let's run it. So PHP Artisan DB seed, successful. Refresh the database and we have 10 more users with first names and last names. Great. The next task for us is to create users CRUD for managing the users. Later we will add roles and assign that permission only to the admin role. But for now, users menu here with table and create, delete, and update. I typically start with controller, so down below you can see make controller with a few flags. So it is resourceful controller, which means it will generate all the methods that we need, and also will type hint user model for route model binding. We generate that, and then we open that user controller, which looks like this. So we have all the methods. Now let's add that user controller into our routes. The routes already contain the route group with middleware auth generated by Laravel Breeze. And let's add here route resource, users, user controller class, and that line completion was suggested by local AI in PHP Storm, but what it didn't do is importing the class on top. So we need to do that manually and add the class here. Great, so we have the route, and to test that it actually works, let's echo something. Echo hi in the index, and in the browser let's launch /users and we have hi. Great. Route and controller works. Now the blade files. First, let's load the table. So users will be user, not all, but paginate by 10, for example. And then return view users index with compact user, also auto-completed by my PHP Storm, and also underlined here that view doesn't exist. And I have Laravel IDEA plugin that allows to quickly create that view as empty file, so it's not underlined anymore. Now, what's inside that blade? Laravel Breeze comes with already predefined design layout, and we can actually use that. So if we open Dashboard Blade by Laravel Breeze, we have X app layout here, and we can copy and paste it into users index and change that to users. So the app layout is the same, but inside we'll have different text. For example, let's say hi here for now, and refresh our page, and we have the design just hi inside here. Great, now let's build the table of users. And this is the part I will copy from my notes to save you some time. This is a Tailwind-based table with for each loop. Pretty simple with a lot of Tailwind classes, but copied from our own demo project. And now if we refresh the page, and we have that table. And we also need to rebuild Tailwind classes for that. So some of those classes are not compiled in the default Laravel Breeze. And for that you have two options: npm run build, do it every time, or npm run dev, which will start the Vite server in the background and will look for the CSS changes automatically. So let's go with npm run dev, and now if we refresh, we have a better looking table full width. The only thing left here is pagination links at the bottom. So down below the table, let's add another div with margin top 4 and add users links, the pagination links. And now we don't even need to refresh because npm run dev is running in the background, and now we have page 2 and page 1, the URL is working, pagination is working. Great. Table is done. Next, the form to create a new user. In the controller, in the create method, we just return the view of users create without any data here. And again, let's create that view with Laravel IDEA plugin. It's empty for now, but we will again copy and paste from index blade. Everything, just change create user, and inside we don't need the table, we will have a form. And again, I will copy the HTML code from my notes to save you some time, but the source in this case is register blade, which you already have seen. So there's already a form with some blade components inside of Laravel Breeze. This is partially the benefit of using Starter Kit in general, and later we will see that Breeze has more things like automated tests for profile and stuff like that. But for now, pasting the form, reusing the blade components from Laravel Breeze like X input label, primary button, and others. And this is our form in a nutshell. And we have route user store, which already have with route resource. And let's go to URL/users/create. Seems to be working. Now on top of the table, let's add a link to that create page. So in the index blade on top of table somewhere here, let's add a link to route users create. Add new user, and let's put class underline here. Now we refresh the page and we add a link here. Let's put also margin top 4 for the table. Now it looks good. We click add new user and land on the form. And also, since we're putting the links to add new user, we forgot one thing: to put the link to users in general to that menu item of table of users. So this is where we get back to the navigation of Laravel Breeze, and we have xnav link for the dashboard, and we just copy and paste and have users index here and also users index for link to be active. Or in fact, we should put asterisk here because any routes with users resource should be putting that link as active. And we change that to users here, and we also need to do the same thing in responsive part of Laravel Breeze navigation. If we go down, there's X responsive nav link a little bit higher. Yep, this one. So same here, X responsive nav link to users and route users index and active users asterisk. Okay, for now that link is visible to everyone. Later we will go through roles. So now click on dashboard, not active, not underlined, click users, land on the table, click add new user, we have a form. Now let's submit that form with controller and validation. In the user controller, we have store method prepared for us with request by default, but for validation, I personally prefer to use form request classes. So that's why we run PHP artisan make request here and open that store user request. Actually, let's put it here right away. Store user request, auto-completed by PHP Storm, and also add it on top here automatically. And if we go inside, we should go authorize true to all the users for now, and then in the rules we should put all the validation rules. Another place where I will just paste it from my notes, because I don't want you to see me live coding and typing for majority of this video, trying to make it a bit more shorter at least. So there's first name, last name, and email and password validation, and also we need to import the rule class on top here. So rule is a Laravel class with unique method. I prefer this over unique users as a string. And now in the controller we can do user create, and then instead of that array do request, and AI is suggesting all, not all validated, because all may be a security issue. I have a separate video about that and I will link that in the description below. So we just autocomplete all, but change that to validated. So then Laravel will take only the fields specified here in the list and not any other fields that may be maliciously put into the form by some hacker. And yeah, we'll redirect back, return, redirect route index. This autocomplete is great. And let's see if it works. So we fill that in with fake filler Chrome extension. We save. And we have that user in the table. Yes, we do have our new user number 12. So create form works. What about validation? Let's try to save that here. Okay, this is a front-end validation. Let's actually use the fake filler, but put in the email that already exists in the database. For example, this one. We save, and the validation error is shown successfully because it's powered by Laravel Breeze. If we go to create blade of users, under each field you have X input error, which is a Laravel Breeze based blade component. If we go to input error blade in the resources views components, this is what's under the hood. And also I want to show you and emphasize one more thing. In the user's password field, we don't do anything specifically here, neither in the controller nor in the form request. So we don't really hash the password, but in the database we have that password as hashed successfully. So how does that work? For example, if we add another user and type in the password manually as password, for example, like this, and copy the email, let's see if the login works. So we save that user. Of course, we don't need to use that in LastPass. We log out, we log in, email, and then password is password, successful login. How? The kind of secret, the trick is in the default user model of Laravel. You can see fillable fields, password, and then also casts password to hashed. So for user model, since I think it's Laravel 11 thing, you don't need to do user create with hash make password or hash it manually in other way. It is done automatically for you, and it comes with default Laravel 11. The next step is the edit form, and we have already edit and delete as texts in the table, and we need to change that. We have create blade, which we will save as edit form, and in the index blade file of users, we will add a link here. Instead of edit and delete, let's put the link, a route users edit with user as a parameter, which will be auto resolved by route model binding, and edit here, and let's put underline class like this, and then delete will be like this for now. If we go back to browser, again without refreshing because we have npm run dev running, we have a link. For now that link doesn't lead anywhere because if we click, it's an empty page. The controller method actually exists, but it doesn't do anything yet. So we have in the route resource controller the edit method. Actually we can remove the show method because we don't use that in our project. And in here all we need to do is return view users edit like this. And we don't have that edit blade file. Let's create that view, empty for now, but we will copy most of it from create blade, so copy and paste, or we could even do file save as and change just a few things. So instead of create user, edit user, instead of form action user store, we have user update with parameter of user, and then the values would be not just the old first name from the session from the validation errors, but also as a fallback value user first name, like this. And the same thing for other fields. I will just do it behind the scenes quickly. So done. And also I removed the password field because change password is a separate menu item in the future that we will touch. If I don't forget, remind me if I do. But personally, I prefer changing profile and change password to be separate routes. And now, if we refresh our page, we have the form with the data. Great. Now update. In the user controller, again, let's create a form request for update user request. It's a personal preference to have separate form request classes. Some people do one user request, but I prefer store user request and update user request separately. So update user request, generate with PHP Artisan make request. Also change that here, update user request, and go inside, close the terminal, change authorize to true, and copy validation values, validation rules from another form request except for password. So we have store user request, we can copy from here except for password, so we don't need password. And also in the rule unique, we need to have ignore current user, ignore user, like this. Or in fact, the form request class doesn't know about the user variable, it's this user, like this. Okay, and then in the controller we can do user update, request validated, with also redirect route, copy from store, same thing, return redirect route, and let's try to change the data. So dot here, for example, dot here, and for example add 2 in here. We save. One more thing I forgot. In the edit blade, of course, it's not only the route, but also the method. So method should be post, but the actual method would be in the variable called put or patch. It's usually a put method here. So we go back, refresh the form, and make the same changes, for example. And maybe now it would work. Yep, as you can see, dot here, dot here, and number 2 here. It worked. Great. Now delete link or button. In the index blade, we change that delete that we have into a form. So form with action for delete. So method post, action route users destroy with again parameter of user. And on click of a button on submit, we need to add confirmation. So I often do that just in plain JavaScript. On submit, return confirm, are you sure, like this. Maybe let's put it on a new line like this for more readability with action like this. And then we need to have a button of delete. So button delete, type submit, like this. It will likely look ugly or not necessarily. Let's just add a class of red, for example, red, or text red, for example, like this, and also underline and inline, probably inline block like this. Or actually inline block should be in the form, not in the button, so we add a class here, inline block like this, and yeah, much better, delete. If we click that link, are you sure, cancel, nothing happens. But if we do approve, then we need in the controller to implement this method. So user delete, and then again return redirect route with the same thing. Let's try it out. Let's go, for example, to second page and delete this user. Okay, and again I forgot the same thing. So form method post, but the actual method with variable should be delete, method delete, like this. And also forgot one more thing, should be CSRF. This is a protection for all the forms in Laravel with method post, put, or delete. Refreshing the table, click delete, OK, and now we're back and we have 12 users instead of 13. This one is gone. Great, so we implemented the CRUD for users. There's just one more thing I wanted to add to the structure is soft deletes for users. So when the user is deleted, it actually stays in the database just with deleted add field marked with the date timestamp. To do that in Laravel, we need to make a few changes. So in the user model, we add soft deletes as a trait. So use soft deletes. That's one. Then we need to add deleted add field in the database. And for that, let's change the original migration for now. As we haven't pushed that code anywhere, we can refresh the database pretty freely. So we add soft deletes here, and we remigrate the database with seeds that should seed 10 users. Okay, done. And now, of course, we need to register again with a new user or log in with existing one. So we register, we have users here, and in the database, we have 11 users, and we have deleted add column null table for now. And now what happens when we click delete, for example, for the first user? We delete, okay, it's not in the table, and that's why we don't have pagination anymore, because there are 10 users in the table, but in the database, we refresh, and we have still 11 users, just one of them with deleted at. So yeah, this is how easy it is to implement the soft deletes in Laravel. The next step in our project is to introduce roles and permissions with two roles, admin and simple user, and that user management would be accessible only for admin. There are multiple ways how you can introduce roles and permissions in Laravel, but a pretty well-known solution tool is Spatie Laravel Permission, this package. You can do pretty much similar thing without any packages, with just gates and policies, so it's almost a personal preference. But since it's very popular with 12,000 stars on GitHub, I chose to use this one right off the gate. And here's the installation page, and I will do that according to the instructions. So composer require done, then publish the migration files and migrate the tables for that specific package. Before running migrations, a few notices about UIDs and teams, which we don't need. In case you use cache, you should run those, but we don't use cache in our case, so we just run PHP artisan migrate. Great. As a result, on top of our regular users table, we have now roles. Roles has permissions, model has roles, and model has permissions. This is a polymorphic relations table set, mostly. Now let's fill that in with our roles. So as a final step of installation instruction, we need to add use has roles to the user model here. Has roles. Great. Next, let's make a separate seeder for roles where we will specify admin and simple user. So in the role seeder in the run, we do role from Spatie, create, name admin, and also name user, like this. Next, in the main database seeder, we need to assign roles here to user factory regular users, right? So if we go to that user factory, we need to add one more thing, configure function. I will paste it from my notes. This is the thing. So after creating a user, and we need to autocomplete the model, we will assign the role of user. So by default, all of those users would get the role of simple user. But also let's create a separate admin user. Before that, of course, we need to call the role seeder, so call, and then role seeder here, like this. And only then we create 10 regular users. And also let's create user factory, and let's override a few fields, like email would be admin.com, password, we don't need bcrypt here, let's put just secret, and let's put the name admin as well. And then we assign the role immediately here, assign role with the name of admin here, like this. And also we need to assign the same thing in the registration, so register user controller, user create, and then assign role here. Not sure if that will work as a chain. Create, assign role should work actually. We will try it out. And I forgot one thing, that we changed name to first name admin and also last name, like this. And now let's try to remigrate the full database with seeds, with the roles. Should be successful. And now in the database we have 10 regular users and 1 admin, and we have roles here, admin and user, and model has roles should be not empty. So this is the polymorphic relation for role ID 2 for most of the users. This is the user ID, but then user ID 11 has role ID 1, but also has role ID 2. So this is incorrect. We need not assign the role, but sync roles like this. So we need to remove that default simple user role. Let's try that out again. Migrate fresh seed should be successful. And now if we refresh this table, yep, correct. User ID 11 has only role ID 1. Good. Now let's try the registration. Register form, fake filler Chrome extension. We register, no errors. And what is the role of our new user? Role ID 2. Great, cool. Now let's implement those roles with permissions, or in fact without permissions for now. We will extend them in the future, but for now let's show or hide that user menu item with all the permissions for managing the users, and allow to do that only to admin user. So we need to make changes in 2 places, or in fact 3 places. In the blade file, we need to hide that link for non-admin users. And for that, we just add a blade directive from Spotty package called role. So role admin will be the only one who sees that menu item. So that's the responsive nav link, and then regular nav link, same thing here, role and role. And now if we refresh our page, we don't see that users anymore because we're logged in with a regular user. But as you can see, the table is still here. So if we load the URL of users, it is still accessible. So this is why we need to protect not only in Blade, but also on the backend in, for example, controller. So in the user controller, in the methods of index create and others, we can add gate authorize or something like that, or syntax from the Spotty package. But a better solution, kind of a more global solution, if you want to hide all the methods from one controller, is in the routes in the middleware. Or I mean adding middleware to already route group or route resource or something like that. So in this case, we need to protect this route resource, so we need to add middleware here. And the syntax has changed in Laravel 11 here. So things I'm going to show you now is for Laravel 11. If you have older version, you would have a bit different logic, and please read the docs for that. So we assign the middleware, and let's put it on a new line here. And we don't have the middleware name, but for now, let's use an alias called role and assign admin name here. But according to Spotty package documentation, we need to register middleware name as alias in the with middleware syntax in the Bootstrap app PHP in Laravel 11. So this is what I meant by Laravel 11 changes with middleware, and here we need to register those aliases. Let's register all of them, although for now we use only the role alias, but just in case, let's leave all of them here. And now if we go to our page, we have 403, user does not have the right roles. This error message, by the way, is different with the package. So if you do the same thing without the package, with gates and policies, you will have 403 forbidden or something like that from what I remember. And this message comes from package, which is a bit more human user friendly. So yeah, now we can go to the dashboard. We can access the dashboard here, but we don't see the users menu item because we have, well, regular simple user. But if we log in with admin and password, here we go, we have the user's menu item and everything is accessible. Now it's all working, but I want to mention 2 important things. First, in the official docs of Spotty package, for example in the role blade directive, there's a warning. The best practice is always to check for permission instead of role. So the thing that we're doing here, role admin and in the blade, it's kind of a temporary solution which is suitable for a smaller project as we do have now with not too much logic. But in general, you should have permissions of who can manage users or delete users or something like that, and we will get to that later in this project. So this is kind of the simplified version. And also, I don't really like that admin as a string. The same with database seeder sync roles admin here, because it opens the possibility of typos, or for example, if some other developer in the future comes here and wants to create a new admin, they wouldn't know confidently what is the name of the role. Is it admin? Is it administrator? Is it lowercase, uppercase, something like that? So for that, I would suggest to create an enum PHP class with all those values, that those would be auto-completed with IDE and also validated by enum. So we'll run artisan command make enum role enum. It will return a string here with 2 cases. I will paste it from my notes, admin and user, like this. And what it allows us to do is, first in the seeder, instead of those admin and user, we use role enum role admin, or in fact it's just admin, and then similarly role enum like this. And then everywhere else we use those constants in the database seeder here, sync roles with this, role enum autocomplete. Also in the routes file, we also, instead of doing admin, do role enum admin, but in here we need to also add value like this. And also in the navigation in the blade file, instead of doing role admin, we also do the same thing. Interestingly, PHP Storm doesn't underline that, so maybe it will work. Let's check. So xnav link and also xnavigation link for responsive. Don't forget for Laravel Breeze navigation. So we add that here as well. Let's try it out. And of course, as I expected, Laravel doesn't recognize that without the namespace. So that's app role enum, for example, or maybe with another backslash, I don't remember. Should be this. And then in the regular xnav link, same here. This is good. And now it works. So users, dashboard, we can add a new user, everything works. And if we try to register with a new user, not an admin, let's see if that one works. Register, dashboard, but no users present. And final test, let's remigrate fresh with seeds. We didn't break anything. No, I think we didn't. So yeah, enums like this one helps future users, including yourself, future developers, to not make any typos because you're referencing those strings with constant names. Those also could be constants in, for example, model somewhere, but that model is inside of spatie permission package in our case, so enum is kind of more logical in my opinion. The next big task in our project is another CRUD called clients. So the users would be able to manage clients. It's a CRM. It's a client relation management system. So this will be another CRUD like users, very similar, but users table already existed in Laravel project alongside user model from the very beginning, so it was a bit different. Now we will do it from scratch. We will create model, migration, route, views, controllers, all of that. Some parts I will copy and paste from my notes to save you time, and I will not be strictly live coding, but I will show you all the process. And we'll start with making the model of client with a lot of things automatically. So -m is for migration, then we have controller, C, resourceful controller, R, then uppercase R is request class, and also we need factory and seeder. Or you can delete all those letters and just do A for all. Let's try to do that. And this will generate a bit too much. I didn't want the policy for client policy, but maybe in the future we will use that. For now, let's delete the policy. With the folder itself, we will not use that one. But aside from that, we have a model client and then database migration file. So let's start here. What are the client fields? And I will paste them from my notes. This will be kind of a simplified CRM with just a lot of string fields without any relationship to companies or something like that. So we have this. Contact details and company details. And at the end of the table, we will also use soft deletes. Personally, I like using soft deletes pretty much in all the tables by default. So this is the migration. Now in the model, we need to add fillable here. So protected fillable, and we need to have all the array of all those fields. Again, to save you some time, I will copy them from my notes. Okay, done. Next, factory. Let's fill in all those fields with fake data, and we will have a few clients seeded. So the definition of that is the list of fake functions like this. So name, email, phone number, and stuff like that. And then we can use that factory in the seeder, which is in database seeders, client seeder here. Let's do client factory. For example, 50 clients, create. Good. And let's add that seeder to our own main database seeder. So we have role seeder, then user, and then, of course, we can extract that to user seeder. But for now, let's leave it as it is. This call, or in fact, no, I don't like it. This call, and then another this call. No. Let's generate PHP artisan make seeder user seeder, and then we copy that into this user seeder file, user seeder run, paste, autocomplete those ones, and then we launch that user seeder from here, and then we can do that as array. So call role seeder, then comma user seeder class, and finally client seeder class, like this. Looks much more elegantly. And probably from top we need to remove role enum and user because they're not used here anymore. Now let's migrate that data. Clear, PHP artisan, migrate. Or in fact, let's remigrate the whole database again with the users and rerun those seeders to test if they actually work. Migrate fresh seed, no errors in the database. We have 11 users, and do we have clients? Yep, we have 50 clients with fake data, but pretty awesome to test, pretty accurate format for everything. Great. Next, let's fill in route controller and the views to manage the clients. Let's actually close everything and open routes web. where we will add, in addition to route resource users, our second route resource will be clients and client controller class. In this case, we don't add any middleware for roles because clients will be managed by both admin and simple user. For more complex role and permission system, you would also add middleware here or policy. As you saw, it was generated by default. Now we go inside of that client controller and put in pretty much all the things that we had in the user controller, almost identically. Okay, I've pasted it all from my notes and I will comment that. So in the index we have paginate and we have the view with compact clients. That view doesn't exist yet. That's why it's underlined. So create, store, edit, update, and destroy. Pretty much same thing as we had in the user's controller. Now let's generate all those blade files, starting with client's index. And again, we will have blade from user, copy and paste with layout and everything, and change just the columns and a few details. So instead of users, on top we'll have clients. Add new client will be clients create. Then add new client will be the label of the link. And then the table will be replaced, again from my notes to save you some time. Okay, I have the updated table here with value of the columns company, VAT, and address, for example. And there we go, company, VAT, and address. You may add more fields. It doesn't really matter that much for this example project. And then routes to clients edit with the client route model binding, and then client destroy, again with the client, and class inline block for having that inline. Also, let's add navigation link. In the navigation, in the nav link, we add another nav link which is not protected by any role in that case. So we have clients index and also clients here, and the label is clients. And the same thing with responsive link. Down below should be xnav responsive link, or responsive nav link, the other way around it is called, with route clients index, clients here, route is clients asterisk, which checks which link is active. And now if we go to our dashboard, we see clients menu item. We click and we have that table. A few more things I forgot is to separate, edit, and delete with this symbol. And also table needs to have margin top 4 separated from the link visually. Good, fixed those two. So we can add a new client, typo, add new clients, nope, add new client, singular, and then we click here and we don't have that view. Let's build that one. So client controller, view doesn't exist. Laravel IDEA plugin will help us to create the view, which will be very similar again to users create blade. So I copy and paste create client, and we'll change the form. Route will be clients store, and inside the inputs will be a bit different. So again, I pasted from my notes with another div that needs to be closed. And as you can see, we have the same input labels, text input, just with different names like contact name and others. So we can refresh and have that contact information and company information. Also, let's add margin top 4 for the company information, margin top 4. Yep, looks better with the gap. And now if we fill in the form, we will go to client controller store method that uses store client request, which is empty at the moment for now. Return true for the authorize. And now we have rules validation. Again, I will paste it from my notes to save you some time. All those fields are required with some rule unique. That is optional if you want to do that or not, but these are validation rules. And now this form should be working. We fill that in and try to save. Company VAT should be a number, so fake fill or Chrome extension, of course, is not ideal. Let's put in any number, and also zip should be whatever, save. And now we have a new client at the bottom, number 51. This one. Success. And delete should be also working. We click delete, we confirm, and now we have 50 results. Great. What about edit form? This is not done yet. We don't have the blade view. Again, we go to the controller, edit method, we generate the view with Laravel IDEA, open edit blade from users, copy from here, paste into here, and change things. Edit client, instead of users update, clients update, client as a parameter, and the columns as well. Again, paste from my notes, primary button, save, and then all those columns on top with the value of old and client, company, city as the model. Let's close the terminal. And now that should work. If we refresh, we have edit form with all the details filled in successfully. Let's try to update that, ... But for now it will not work because in the controller, client controller with update, again, we didn't fill in the update form request. Authorize true and validation rules. Again, copy from my notes with rule ignore except for this client. Okay, now let's click submit on that form. We save, and do we have those updated? We have, oh, of course, we don't even show that field of name, so the only way to check is, yeah, go to edit form, and it's already saved. Great, so we have clients CRUD already working. The next piece of functionality in our project will be managing the projects of those clients. Another CRUD, but with a bit more complex structure. So projects would belong to a user, so who's responsible for that project, and project would also belong to a client. And then later in the final part, we will manage the tasks for those projects. So from MVC point of view, controller, route, and view, it will be roughly the same as the client's CRUD, but from the database perspective, a few more relationships, enum fields for status of the project, and drop downs in the forms. Let's go create this one, starting with artisan command for model of the project with -a for creating all the related files for that model. So we need all of those except for policies in our case, so I will delete the policies, but all of those files will be actually used. Let's go to the migration file first. Create projects. What would be the fields for the projects? I will paste it from my notes and comment on them. So title, description, pretty self-explanatory, but then two foreign keys, user ID and client ID, both not null, both required and constrained to users and clients table respectively. Then deadline at, when is the deadline for that project, and then status. We will get to that status in a minute. Let's just add soft deletes as well. And then in the project model, also add soft deletes here on top so I wouldn't forget that. Now also what I like to do when I have foreign ID is immediately create the relationship methods. So in the project model we do immediately public function user belongs to, and then return belongs to user class, and similarly to that also same for client and client class. Later we will use both probably, but even if we don't, it would be convenient for the future for other developers as well. Now, status. In our project, projects may have one of the 5 statuses: open, in progress, blocked, cancelled, or completed. What is the best structure to handle that? To be honest, it's a personal preference. You may have separate statuses as database table and then foreign ID, or you may save that as enum field with those 5 values. But even within the enum, the question is where to save that enum, on the database level as enum here, or as a PHP class enum listing those values. And again, it's a personal preference. I've seen both in action. The downside of enum as a field is that if you need to add more values, you would need to change the database. If you do that as a string, it doesn't require any database changes, so you would then need the changes only in the PHP enum. On the other hand, if you put the string here, it's more flexible, but it doesn't validate the values on the database level. So if you put any typos in the PHP enums or any other places of your code, validation on the database wouldn't happen, and it may end up with wrong values in the database. So it's your personal preference, but I will go with string value in the database, and then we'll create enum class for all those values. So we go PHP artisan make enum project status. It will return a string of possible values. I will paste it from my notes, these ones. So everywhere in the code we'll reference the statuses with these values of constants, but on the database level we'll leave it more flexible with just string. Also from Laravel point of view, to make it more easy and flexible in the model, we need to add casting for that enum. So we do casts method and cast status to that project status class, tap to complete, and also autocomplete that to be added on top here. Or actually, let's refactor that to have enums as a subfolder. Let's create a folder called enums. So app new directory enums, and move that project status file from the main app folder to enums. And PHP Storm will automatically change the namespace, and in the model, it's also automatically changed. Great. The next step is to fill in the factory with some fake data and seed fake projects for the table. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I've copied the values from my notes, and the first ones are pretty clear, so title and description and deadline are from Carbon or from fake. But this is interesting, the first case where we actually use the enum field values or enum class values, because the database field is string, but we can use cases here, which returns an array from what I remember. Yep, it's an array, and then we can do random element from that, which will give us one of the statuses. But now for user and client, I hard-coded one, but we need to pick random user or client. And a typical mistakes that developers do is do something like this. User in random order, first ID or value ID or something like that. But the trouble with that is if you seed a lot of data, a lot of projects, for each project, it will query the database for random user. So you can end up with thousands of database queries and really slow performance of the seeders. If you have only like 50 projects to seed, then no worries, you can leave it as it is. But I will show you a bit better way. So before the definition return, you can query all the users into a collection. So users would be user model plug ID into the array, or we don't need the array in this case. We will work with collection. So here we do users random, which means it will execute one query and then pick the user from the collection. And similarly for the clients, identically, clients is client model plug ID and clients random like this. And then we fill in the seed. So project seeder is typical. So project factory, for example, 20 projects, and create like this. And then we add that seeder into our main database seeder. At the bottom here, we duplicate the line and add project seeder like this. And let's migrate the data for the projects and seed the data. And in this case, I will not do refresh seed as I did previously in this project. From now, let's just migrate and move on. So we do migrate, which would execute the new projects table. And then we will do the seed for that specific seeder, PHP Artisan DB seed, and we specify -- class is specifically project seeder. And we execute that, and now in the database we have a new projects table with the data, status as you can see from enum, users and clients as you can see randomized, all pretty cool. And now a typical MVC CRUD thing, so route, controller, and views. So let's duplicate in the routes web, clients will be projects, and then we have project controller. And if we go inside, for now that project controller methods are empty, and I will fill them from my notes. They are pretty typical, but I will stop on important parts. Yep, so here we go. In the index method, we get the project with relationships, eager loading to avoid n+1 query problem. Then in the create and also in the edit form, we need to have users and clients for the drop-down values, and this is a bit important. Pretty typical performance issue mistake people are doing is, instead of selecting only the data that you need, I see a lot of time done this. So user all, and then in the drop down for each of the users. The problem is that if your user contains 20 columns in the database, you will download them without really needing them. So I do advise to select only the fields that you need. And now let's create the table blade file. Again, create view with Laravel IDEA plugin. And another case of copy paste from another blade file, in this case clients blade. We will just change that to projects and change the link and the table columns. Again, I will do it from my notes. Okay, done. Let's close the sidebar and let's quickly run through that. Projects create link, and then the table with columns like title assigned to user, client, with relationships, deadline, and status. So title, a few fields from the user, first name and last name, then company name, those from relationships, deadline, and status. Status is a string in the database, so the blade doesn't really know that it's enum under the hood. And then the links to edit and delete. And as a result, now we type in projects in the browser and we see that table that you can see on the screen, similar to clients. And now let's add that navigation link here. Again, in the navigation blade of Laravel Breeze, I will repeat, there are two places to add links. Responsive nav link for projects, in this case, leading to projects index, and here the activation condition. And then on top, it's a regular XNav link, also available to both admins and regular users. Projects index, similar thing here. Okay, and now we have clients underlined here. If we click projects, this one is underlined. Great. Now the full CRUD, add new project, and for now it fails because of course the view doesn't exist yet. As usual in the controller, projects create a view with Laravel idea, pasted the code from my notes, and let's quickly run through the main things. So form action project store, nothing really fancy here, title, description, deadline. Deadline is type date natively in the browser without any date picker, and here we have drop-downs for users with first name and last name, and selected comes from old if the validation fails. And similarly for the client, nothing really fancy here either. And in here, another case where we use the enum from project status. There's a cases method which we can use also for the drop-down. And this is the result form with the drop-downs like status. Oh, I noticed one thing, not assigned user, client, or not assigned, just generally client, label, refresh, good. And also have mixed emotions about type date in the browser because the format depends on the browser then. So we need to maybe transform that on the backend then. Let's use fake filler Chrome extension and fill that in. And let's fill in the store method of the controller here. It is actually already filled. We just need to provide the fields in the form request. Here we have return true and the validation rules. I will paste it from my notes. So typical required rules, but with rule exists for the relationships and rule enum, another case where we can use enum class for validation in this case. Let's try it out. I'm not entirely sure what happens with the date. Will it fail or not? Let's try it out together. We save. Oh, of course, I've set the project deadline in the future, so let's pick a future date instead of fake filler Chrome extension. We save. And I forgot one more thing, fillables on the model. In the model we created the relationships, the casts, but we didn't fill in the fillables. Again, I will just paste the same fields as in the migration, nothing really fancy here again. We try to refresh, and yeah, it is successful. Let's go to page 3, and we have our new project with the deadline set successfully and converted. Good. Delete should also work. Let's confirm and try it out. We have again 20 results and 2 pages. Now the edit form, for now it is empty. There's no blade file yet, so let's create that one. Create view, and this is the typical blade code. So for method post, but with the update action, and method put, and then all those columns with the values from project columns from the database now. Again with the drop downs here. With selected we have old value or value from the database, and similar to the client, and similar with enums, and save button. Let's try it out. We refresh the page and we have our form filled in successfully. And to update that data, we need to fill in the update project request again with the rules, authorize true, and rules columns. Paste it from my notes. I hope I don't annoy you with that pasting, but I'm honestly just trying to save you some time, so that video would not be like 24 hours in total. Autocomplete, all of those to use on top. Let's try to change something, ... at the end. Let's change the status to in progress. We save, and we have ... here and status in progress. Great, so now we have projects CRUD successfully done. The final menu item on top in our CRM will be tasks, managing the tasks for projects. And in this case, it will be another CRUD pretty similar to projects CRUD. And that's why in this section, I will just quickly run through that, copy pasting as much as possible without too much commenting, because you've just seen similar behavior in the projects CRUD. I will just stop on something important or different. So make model tasks migration with 3 columns for an ID, belongs to user, client, and project, with also status column that also will be an enum, which is exactly the next step. Make enum task status, string with values like these, so 6 possible values for the status of each task. One thing I forgot with make enum artisan command, it will automatically check if there is an enums folder already, so I didn't need to specify that manually because now we have app enums. So we need to drag that file 1 level up and delete that subfolder of enums. Next, task model, soft deletes, and fillable fields pasted from my notes. Also casting the status to enum class as we did with projects, and we'll paste 3 functions with belongs to relationships, autocomplete that, and should not be underlined anymore. Great. So database structure is done. Now factory and seed for the data of that structure. Task factory definition with faker. And this is the definition. We get users, clients, and projects from the database, and we assign random values to each of them. Everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. Additional faker logic for deadline, which should be plus 1 month to 6 months, and status from enum. Next, task seeder using the factory. And let's try to migrate and seed. PHP artisan migrate should migrate the tasks table, and then db seed with task seeder should seed 100 task, and I forgot to add that to the database seeder like this, task seeder. And what do we have in the database? So we have the new tasks table with this structure and randomized things for both relationship and enum values. Great. Next, typical CRUD again, route resource, in the routes, tasks, task controller, and inside of task controller, pasted from my notes, the same logic as it was in projects, list of tasks with eager loaded relationships, create with data for the dropdowns, then store, edit, update, and destroy. Nothing really new. Now the view files, let's start with tasks index, again paste it, and we'll change projects to tasks here. This is the updated code, linked to add new task, and then table with columns like assigned to, client, deadline, and status, and then for each, nothing really fancy here. Again, fields with relationships, and edit and delete links, and form submit. Navigation blade, let's add a link, xnav link to tasks, and same for the responsive link. Also add it. Let's refresh our page, and we have the link on the top to tasks, and the table actually works. Small detail, margin top forgotten in the tasks. Here, margin top 4. Great. Now add new task. For now, view not found. Create from controller, create view. This is the code, form with action, and same thing with inputs and error messages, and the relationships with dropdowns with selected blade directive. Nothing really new here as well. Enums are also used. So now if we refresh, we have this form. For the submission, again, we need to fill in the store task request, true for authorize, and validation rules. Pasting, also pretty similar to what we've done with projects. Rule exists for the relationship, and task status enum autocomplete for status. So let's try to fill in the form. Fake fill Chrome extension, deadline, let's put it a bit in the future, and let's see if the save works. Yep, we had 100 results, now we had 101, so the last page is our new task. Delete, does it work? Yep, it does work. 100 results again. Edit, of course it will fail for now. This is the last part. So again, task controller, edit, create view, and the usual blade code with edit task, update form with method put, and all those fields with relationships for each, and enum as well. You've already seen that in the projects. Now if we refresh the page, we have the form, and let's put ... here and change the status to open, and to save that, in the task controller we fill in the update task request with authorize true and rules, the same ones as in store task request with rule and enum autocompleted. Let's see if it works. We save, and we have ... here, and open status saved successfully. So yeah, a quick rundown of CRUD number 4 in our project, the last one as a full CRUD. In the final part of this video, let's get back to the topic of roles and permissions, and now since we have all the CRUDs, let's restrict the deleting part of every CRUD from simple users. So simple users can add clients, projects, and tasks, but cannot delete any of them. That would be only for admin. And for that, we need to change the concept of role into actual permissions. So for example, currently we're checking the role with the blade command from Spotty package by role. And the package itself in the documentation suggests that you better check for permissions, because permission is the actual check who can do what, and role is just a set of permission, just with overarching name of admin or regular user. So let's introduce the permissions. Instead of having role here, let's change that to a typical Laravel blade directive called can, and we will have permission name of manage users, for example. And we will assign that permission to the admin in a minute. So can and can, like this. And also in the routes web where we protect that middleware, this middleware role, it should be middleware can and the same name, manage users, like this. Now, where we introduce that permission of manage users, we will need another seeder for that, specifically for permissions. Let's do make seeder permission seeder. In our database seeder, we do have already role seeder, and then let's introduce permission seeder after that. So permission seeder class here. For now, it is empty. And in here, we see the permissions provided by Spotty package. The syntax is simple. Permission, create, and then name, instead of view users, manage users, like this. And in here right away, we assign that permission to the user role of admin. For that, I will copy and paste from the documentation of Spotty permission package, role, find by name. We will have the name, and we do have enum for that, role enum admin, and then we give permission to manage users. Same thing. And in here, the value string is expected, so we need to have value here. Good. Now let's try to seed that. Seeder execute separately instead of database seeder and refreshing everything. This is successful. Now in the database, we have this in role has permissions, permission ID 1 and role ID 1. And permissions is this, manage users, and roles is this set of data. Now I'm logged in as admin, and let's see if I still see the users menu item. I refresh and users are still here. But now if I register as a new user without admin rights, register, fake filler Chrome extension, I register and the users are not seen anymore. So what we've done here is checking the permissions both in the blade and in the middleware in the web by permission name instead of role. And I just forgot, of course, to do the same thing in the responsive link of Laravel Breeze. There it is. So instead of role, we also do can here. And the same thing we did with role enums. Manage users is also a string that is repeated everywhere, and God forbid we have any typos or something like that. So let's create enums for that as well. So we do PHP artisan make enum permission enum. It will return a string with, for now, just one value of case manage users equals manage users, like this. And then everywhere we have in the navigation, for example, manage users, we can replace that with permissions enum manage users, like this. Or let's put value so it would not be underlined. And similarly on top in the non-responsive link above. Also, we can change that in the seeder now instead of manage users. Also permission enum manage users, like this. And in one more place in the middleware web here, instead of manage users as a string, manage users value as a string, like this. Let's refresh the page. We didn't break anything. No, it still works. Good. And now, since we have the permissions, let's restrict the deletion that I mentioned in the beginning a bit earlier. Let's introduce more permissions here. And of course, I forgot to reuse the same thing here instead of manage users. So we create more permissions like delete projects, delete clients, and delete tasks. So something like that. Clients, projects, and tasks. Those do not exist yet, and let's create them. So I've done it behind the scenes. We have 3 cases now, and let's add those permissions to the same role of admin. So we will have array here, and let's put that array values on separate lines, duplicate, 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 and then delete clients, delete projects, delete tasks, like this. Then let's go to the table of, for example, clients. Again, I'm logged in as non-admin user. We need to hide that delete both from front end and from back end. So in the index blade of clients, in here we have method delete, and we need to hide that with can blade directive. And instead of string, again, we can use permission enum delete clients, like this, and can, like this, and let's put in value here. I'm not actually 100% sure, it's just underlined by my PHP Storm, but maybe it would work by magic, so to speak, even without the value. We refresh, and now we don't have the delete button. And then in the controller of clients delete, we need to add authorization in the destroy method like this. So in here we do gate authorize, and instead of delete client, we do the same with enum, permission enum, delete clients like this. Also underlining, also needs value, I guess so. Yep. It is, by the way, one way of doing that. You can, for example, use policies for that, and then that code would look a bit differently. So gate authorize, delete, and the client variable, as you saw probably what PHP Storm AI Assistant tried to suggest to me. But in this case, we're going with strings for permissions with enum. So now we need to do the same thing in all destroy methods of all controllers. So task controller at the bottom destroy like this, just delete tasks instead, and also projects controller destroy method here, another gate authorize, autocomplete by PHP Storm, and delete projects. And similarly in the blade files of all the index of tasks and projects, tasks index. Let's close the terminal now. In here, can delete tasks, and at the bottom, and can like this. Finally, projects index with the same change of adding can here, delete projects, and can at the bottom. The final thing is to actually seed those permissions again, and I'm not actually sure whether to delete that manually and reseed. It's your personal preference. Now the project isn't live yet on any GitHub or server, so you can do it freely in your database. For example, I'll just probably delete those records manually from the table and reseed again, so no role has permissions. And in the permissions table, we also delete that manage users. And now we can reseed the permissions again, and let's try to log in with admin. So the current user, again, we refresh, nothing changed, but if we log in as admin, let's see what we have. We do see users, great, and we do see delete buttons here. And if we try to delete, we have gate authorize error because I've used the wrong class in the controller. Let's close it down. This is a typical problem with IDEs. So you do gate, and then there are a few options. Which one do you choose? So I've chosen the first one that was suggested to me, and it happens to have the same method of authorize, just non-static, but the actual class should have been support facades like this. So we don't need to change that here. Instead, we change that on top. Instead of auth access support facade, not db, but gate like this. This is in the client controller. Let's refresh that one, and now it is successful. So we need to change the same thing in other controllers. Project controller on top, gate from facades, and task controller, gate from facades as well. So yeah, a bit of a refactoring for permissions using Spatie package. Again, I'm repeating, this is just one way of dealing with roles and permissions. I'm currently working on the full course with all the cases of roles and permissions and teams and multi-tenancy and stuff like that. It's a very complex topic with various use cases. So in here, you saw just one example of potentially one of the options to deal with that.